Here is how I made a couple outdoor tables recently. Now these are basically video blogs more than how-tos. So I started off milling up the lumber, getting one side. I didn't get it perfect because I wanted my last pass to be through the planer, but just getting the first side essentially flat, so it's a reference. I also did the perpendicular edge on the jointer before I ran it through. That gave me one good edge to use as a marking or reference point with the ruler. So I made 2 lines just to make sure my jig was set up properly on the table. I don't have a table saw, so this is how I work. And I just cut strips. I really like the look of the grain when I cut it, when I jointed it mainly, so that's why I did all these strips. I had a leftover piece of cypress, so I cut off the edges and made some tenons there. I must admit, I'm not sure if those tenons were worth it. It was quite a bit of extra work. My thought was it would help prevent it from warping, especially since it's an outside table. So here I am, just marking where I'm going to put those tenons, clamping it down, and I just transferred the lines. I had to make special marks on the ends, so I didn't put the mortises right through. So here I am, and I just put 4 mortises through all of those pieces. Another rationale of the tenons was to help align it during the glue up. This worked a little bit, but again, I'm not sure if it was quite worth the hassle. I'll jump to making the base now. I had some leftover cedar from a deck project, so I tried to optimize it. So here I am marking up for the legs and all that. Had to do some resawing, but once I measured it up, I cut it some this way, I cut some this way, and cleaned up the edges through the jointer, squared it up on the planer, resawed some others. After that, I cut the curve in the bottom of the leg. I don't know what that piece of the table's called, that joins the 2 legs together to prevent racking, provides a little support design. Cleaned it up. I got one perfect, and then I used a flush trim router bit to make the others the exact same. I was making 2 tables here, so this actually made the process way faster. Once I got the one perfect, I had to use a lot of hand sanding and this other sander to get it the shape I wanted. Okay, back to the top, cleaned up some of the glue and used the coarse mode on this sander to strip off any glue. I mean, I probably could have wiped it down but I didn't. This didn't take very long anyways. So I didn't put the mortises on the end pieces because I need to put smaller ones in so that when I do my edge profile, the tenon isn't exposed, or the whole of the mortise isn't exposed. And now I'm going to give it a profile after I glued those on. I didn't show that, but obviously they're glued on. A little bit of fuzz on or tear out, but that cleaned up really easy after with just a little hand sanding. Next up on the legs, I had to just sand those quickly, and then I rounded over the edges. I believe I used a 1/4 round over on this. Oh, I didn't show me dominoing the edges of the legs together and lining them up. I'm going to put the dominoes in the end grain, and then they'll be handy in my domino drying rack, which you'll see in a second. All right, they're drying up, and this is the drying rack. I didn't show this part of the build, but what I do is I have this pack of dominoes that are extra ones for whatever reason. Maybe I sanded them down, and then they're a little easier to get in and out, and I use those for dry fitting and sometimes for just drying. I then assembled 2 legs and then added the adjacent sides or perpendicular sides. The dominoes make this so easy to create the offset. There's lots of videos on the internet on how to do that, I'm sure. And again, this isn't a how-to, it's more like a blog. Clean up the glue spots. I do that on here because it's a lot harder to sand it. This is how I adhere the top to the legs. So I sort of set up a stop, marked off where I wanted the dominoes, and there we go. And then on the table, the corresponding other side, the mortise is in, and then the top basically just sat right on there. You can see, just need to rotate and pop it down. Now, at this point, I actually was short a couple dominoes, but they lined up and the table went together nicely.
Alright, here we locked in. Very nice. So I'm gonna put another 2 here and 1 there, and that'll be it. I'm actually out of dominoes though. I need to order some more, so in a way there's no rush. Not gonna make any, I'm making a lot of stuff for outside.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the build. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe.